And this is the situation we have where we, the UK, are ceding our control and ownership of the Chagos Islands to Mauritius. We're doing this not for free. We are effectively paying to do this. So we're going to pay them £100 million a year for 99 years to rent back Diego Garcia, which is where the base is, the military base is.
So that again, 100 million for 99 years?
Correct.
It's about 10 billion. Is that right?
Well, there is allowing for things like discounting and everything. I think the number that people keep putting on this is about 35 billion.
Okay.
But as well as that amount of money, the leaseback thing, we are paying, I think, 45 million to Mauritius to help them do the integration and looking after the islands. And we're also paying 40 million a year to a trust fund for the Chagosians. So it is costing us an arm and a leg, you might say, to do this. Now, you might remember that the reason, and you went through this when we talked about it before, what this all came from was a International Court of Justice ruling that said that the Chagos Islands should be returned to Mauritius. Now, that ruling didn't really have any international standing. We weren't required to abide by it. But the government we have, I mean, I think Keir Starmer said something along the lines of, this is correcting hundreds of years of wrong, that kind of narrative. And Richard Hermer, the Attorney General...
Graham Stringer's best friend.
That's right, as we remember, said we have to place international law at the centre of our foreign policy. So, they effectively are doing what they think is what they are required to do by this international body. Lots of people don't agree with them, including the Chagosians themselves. And there is now a Chagosian government in exile in the UK, which I think is a development since we last talked about it. So why are we talking about this now? So really because of America's intervention on it. So America's been all over on this, to be honest. So I think back in 2024, Rubio said that, they thought this was a sensible thing to do. I think in 2025, when Starmer was in the Oval Office, I think Donald Trump said something along the lines of they agreed it was probably the right thing to do. But the thing that's changed very recently is that Donald Trump has said on, is it called Truth Social? I never know what it's called. Yes. That it's an act of great stupidity, in capitals, of course. So it's completely changed his mind. Now, a lot of people seem to think that because we've signed the treaty with Mauritius to do this, we're kind of tied into it. My understanding is we aren't, because that deal has to be ratified by Parliament. And it's been through the House of Commons and the House of Lords. I think it's back now with the House of Commons. The House of Lords had suggested some amendments that included, I think, some amendments on kind of transparency and what happens to the money if Mauritius doesn't do what we want it to do and those kind of things. And a couple of amendments on, well, what about, shouldn't the Chagosians have some kind of a say in this? And I think that's quite interesting. Come back to that in a minute. So this bill this hasn't been passed yet. So I think we can still change our minds. I'm not quite sure if we wanted to just withdraw the bill altogether, what the kind of parliamentary system is to do that. But I'm quite sure that we aren't at this stage tied into it. Now, I guess two big questions are, why is America intervening now? And, what do we think about it? And I think it's quite hard to separate America's intervention from the whole Greenland discussion. Because if it's possible to just have an army base on an island without owning the whole country, then you might say, why does America need to own Greenland? So, it kind of raises that question. So I think part of Trump's intervention is saying, oh no, it's you need to own the whole place because that's what we're saying we need to do in Greenland. So I think those issues are a bit mixed up. I'm not sure his intervention is a purely Chagosian based one. I think it is a wider one. But the second thing I think is, what are the principles here? What are the principles that we should be thinking about? And to me, there's two that are important. One is the whole idea of sovereignty and national self-determination of a nation. And that's where it seems absolutely bonkers that nobody's asked the Chagosians what they think. And we certainly know what a lot of the Chagosians think, which is that either it should remain with Britain or that it shouldn't be given to Mauritius.
Well, I went to an event in Manchester that I told you about, which
Yeah.
was organised in part by the Chagosian community up here, alongside this organisation called the Friends of the British Overseas Territories.
Yes.
FOBOT. And it was absolutely shocking to me to go and be in a room where I'm pretty much amongst a handful of white people in a room of hundreds and hundreds of Chagosians, and they're all brandishing these the flag of what's known as the British Indian Ocean Territory.
Yes, yeah.
The reason it's called the British Indian Ocean Territory and we don't just say the Chagos Islands is that previously it had different parts that were ceded to the Seychelles maybe in the 60s or so. So now the British Indian Ocean Territory is made up solely of the Chagos Islands.
Mm-hmm.
But they've got this amazing flag. If you've ever seen it, it's wonderful, with a Union Jack on it. And it was amazing to see them so sort of, they're patriotic despite the fact that they've been left by the British government. They're saying that the Britons should have sovereignty of the Chagos Islands, and we should be able to have a say in that.
Yep.
And it's like they're left on their own to be patriotic.
Yeah.
That seems incredible to me.
It's weird, isn't it? Yeah. But, when everything's kind of up in the air at the moment in terms of sovereignty and nationhood, it seems to me that one of the principles that is really important is always the self-determination of a nation of citizens, even if they are spread out over the world. And also, the idea that a sovereign nation should retain that sovereignty, which kind of spills over into the Greenland argument, doesn't it?
Yeah. So tell me what you think about Greenland then.
Well, just before we go on to Greenland, I think the other thing that's really important here, and that just doesn't seem to have been discussed at all in any of the discussion, is what's in Britain's national self-interest.
Well, this is what I was going to.
Yeah,
go for
which
it.
I suppose that does lead on to Greenland as well, doesn't it? So we seem to be talking about all this as if, it's either some external court that decides it, or it's some other country. We'll wait to see what Donald Trump tells us to do, or it's something that is decided in smoke-filled rooms. They're probably not smoke-filled these days, are they? But behind closed doors, and actually a proper discussion about what do we think is in our national interest is wholly missing from that debate. And as probably you were maybe leading on to, that is also missing from the debate about Greenland, isn't it? So in Greenland, we're talking about what does NATO require, what does America want, what does everybody else want? And that kind of feels to me a bit of that we're abandoning our duty to think about what's right for the UK. And that has to be a kind of realpolitik answer as to what's right for the UK. Which has to be grounded in things like, to what extent can we control our borders? It kind of feels like we can't do that. So the idea that we might be able to defend somebody else's borders seems a bit aspirational. So that feels to me the really missing link from a lot of these discussions is, what is Britain's national interest here?
Right. So perhaps... I said this to a friend this week, perhaps our national interest would be something like, we have a really good opportunity here in between Denmark and the US, right, in negotiations, to play a blinder and actually come out with sovereignty ourselves of Greenland. We could take the island over. Nobody's questioning that. Like, nobody's thought that as a possibility. And, people might be against it, sure. But wouldn't it be interesting if that was part of the conversation of, like, wouldn't it be exciting to see Keir Starmer come out and say, and to speak in the national interest in a similar way to what Donald Trump does?
Yeah.
Because you can disagree with what Donald Trump's doing, but so much of his argument is founded upon this idea that he's acting in the interests of America.
Yeah.
Right? And all that's happening at the moment, in my eyes, is it is shining a light on the fact that we have come to rely so heavily on America that if they were to act in their own interests at some point, suddenly we'd be in a real pickle.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And we've talked before about, if you remember, with Tara McCormack.
We did
an interview with her where she said we can't even launch our own nuclear weapons without the Americans.
Yeah.
So we need to really start reevaluating our own foreign policy to actually think about what's in the best interests of our citizens.
Agreed.
Right? And I say the Greenland thing is a little bit tongue in cheek.
Yeah.
But it's almost like you've got to put that on the table so that it gets us thinking in the right terms of what's in our best interests.
Yes.
And somebody might say, and you tell me what you think of this, but somebody might say, isn't that a selfish world where people are only thinking about themselves? Countries are only considering what's best for them. And what happens when you get a country like Denmark that's smaller, less militarily capable? Do we just leave them out to dry?
And I would say the answer to that is we can only really know what is right for ourselves. And there's a whole litany of examples of countries intervening abroad to help the people of that foreign country that have gone disastrously wrong. So intervening on behalf of people in another country, I think is always, to me, kind of fraught with, nervousness and worry that actually, how can we know what is right for another country? It's only when you have a sovereign nation that has a democratic way of understanding what its citizens want that you can know what's right for that country.
Right.
And I think all these things feed back together: democracy, self-determination, sovereignty. These are all things that we've just forgotten how to do.
Yeah.
And we need to reinvent.
And a lot of the people that are fervently anti-Trump, and let's say the liberals or the liberal classes, the media and so forth, they are coming out and defending Denmark, which, if you think about it in another context, they'd be upset with Denmark holding territory that's far away from its own mainland. Yeah. And what they would normally be advocating self-determination for the Greenlanders themselves. Yeah. And as you know, because I think this is weird, I think this came up in a previous podcast a long, long time back, how we were talking about the politics of Greenland. And
yes.
Do you remember this?
Well, yeah. Can't remember why.
The political parties in Greenland, they have a certain autonomy. And really the only things that are controlled by Denmark are foreign policy and defence. And the overarching difference between the parties in Greenland is that some of them say they want independence now, and some of them say we need a path to independence. But the overwhelming majority of the Greenland Parliament is represented by parties that are advocating independence from Denmark in the first place.
Right. Yes. Yeah. And you told me what they called themselves, didn't you? The Greenlanders. There's a special...
The Kalalit, which I think it just means people in the Inuit language, which I love.
Yeah, that's great.
It's like just people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or the slang term Kalak, maybe.
Okay.
But if we've got any Greenlandic listeners,
yeah, let us know.
Please tell us if we've gone wrong.
Just finally, tying that back to Chagos, because when Keir Starmer's talking about, it being the right thing to do to pass over the ownership of the islands to Mauritius, he's kind of talking about that as if it's an anti-colonial thing to do. But surely, that's what we used to do in the olden days. We used to take a map and we used to draw lines and we used to say that's yours and that's ours. That's massively colonial, isn't it? And yet how can he say that's anti-colonialist?
Yeah, and it feels to me, and I think a lot of the people on our side of this issue that are perhaps, I would say, a little bit more measured when we look at history and recognise the nuances, would say that a lot of the anti-colonial thing is an attempt for two wrongs to make a right.
Yeah.
So they're trying to
Yeah.
repair history by doing things, but then they're just
Yeah.
causing more problems.
Correct.
And finally, then, just on a slightly more of a point about the national interest and how we should be thinking about it. I think some people might think that we're saying we should be isolationist because we only care about ourselves, like put up the walls.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think the national interest has to be a conversation about, so we can have relationships with other countries, but all of those relationships should tie into the national interest.
Yes.
Because if they don't tie into the national interest, they're not strong relationships, and they
Yeah.
won't last the test of time because the
Correct.
population will vote out the leaders that have made those agreements in the first place.
Yeah.
So in the case of Denmark, Greenland, and the US, we can allow ourselves to Denmark like Starmer is doing, but unless there's a really key plan, all you're going to do is be shouting about international law up until the point that Trump takes Greenland.
Yeah.
And then what have we got out of it anyway? What was the point of all that? You were just
Yeah.
virtue signaling.
Yeah.